Hi, I'm Jane Gaskins, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2014 Fiber Artist Network art exhibit. For those of you who are unfamiliar with fiber art, it's any piece of art that is made from a fibrous material. It can be fabric, roving, yarn, paper, even wood. But fiber art has its origin in craft, and we have seen over the years fiber art go from the strictly utilitarian to, on one side, to the purely art form on the other side. Now that being said, there are some pieces, in fact you'll see some beautiful examples in this exhibit, that bridge the gap, that are strong art pieces but still maintain their functionality. For example, some of the art to wear and the basketry. But you will also see many different examples of techniques. You'll see felting, you'll see basketry, of course, dyeing, and also several, for example, several different forms of art quilts. And these are definitely not things that you will ever see in a quilt show. We are very excited about this exhibit because it's very unique to Jacksonville. It's not unusual to find fiber art in your better galleries in California, New York, Pennsylvania, large cities like Chicago, San Diego, but we don't get to see very much of it around here, and we're hoping to change that. And the Fiber Artist Network is a group of fiber artists from Northeast Florida. And we have one group that meets in Jacksonville, we have another group that meets in Tallahassee. And even within the fiber artist world, we're kind of unique because most fiber art groups concentrate on one technique. You'll find all weavers get together, or you'll find art quilters or dyers. In this group, we encourage anybody who works in a fiber art discipline to join us, because we find that it takes the emphasis from the intricacies of the technique to the purity of the art form. And we also find that we give each other a greater perspective on our own work. Now, let's take a look at some of the pieces. This was a juried show, and we were very, very happy to work with Maya Schonenberger, who is an internationally acclaimed fiber artist from Bern, Switzerland, who now lives in Miami, and she was a delight to work with, and we were very, very happy that she allowed us to display some of her work, which are beautiful examples of fiber art. Here you will see that Maya has, she's combined fabric and paper, and then she's gone back and she's stitched it, and then she's gone back in and painted it to create a very dramatic visual that is somewhat impressionistic. This one is paint lines. This one is it's fog, which again gives you the feeling of fog, but you've got texture that becomes more evident the closer you get to it. Here, Amy Dove has created a beautiful grouping of felted abstract florals. And these are so very dimensional that one of the nice elements is that when the light hits it, the shadows play off of it to add to the overall composition, which adds even more drama. Has blended vibrant pieces of roving very gracefully together, and also incorporated, as you get closer, you can see little pieces of fibers that are very iridescent. And that, with the shadow effect, adds very much to the overall composition. And here, Mary Romo Sierra has created a very dramatic art quilt. And here, it's a very strong design where she's combined different textural effects in a very rhythmic flow. In fact, all of Mary's work is very rhythmic. And she puts very surprising elements into it, like hand stitching, beads, pearls, bits of lace. But this piece makes a very strong statement about the effect of pollution on our environment. And this is another one of Mary's pieces where she has gone sort of the opposite direction. The first one we saw, she added. Everything was being added. Well, here she's taking away. And here she has actually burned holes in this to create a very strong texture. But it's also a very lacy effect and a very layered effect. And it's fascinating what all you can do with fiber art. This is another art quilt by Lynette Holmes. And if you notice, it's framed, which is very typical of smaller pieces of art quilts. Again, not something that you will ever see in a quilt show. And here Lynette has pleated and folded different pieces of different colors of fabric and different textures of fabric to create an impressionistic landscape. But then she's gone back in and put a strong horizontal line with very interesting vertical pleats, vertical stitching in there to take what would have been a very pastoral scene and made it very exciting and very dramatic. And now we have some of my work. Here, these are technically art quilts also, but from a very different perspective. Here I have combined my photography with what is known as thread painting, and some people may also know it as machine embroidery. And what I have done is made an overlay on top of a photograph of stitching, embroidered stitching. And then I have gone in, and you can see it really more in this piece where I've stuffed it and sculpted it, with the idea being that we have a photorealistic piece that is dimensional and actually draws the artist in. And now I would like to introduce Carol Ann Rice Rafferty, another one of our outstanding members, and ask her to tell about her artwork.
Hello, I'm Carol Ann Rice Rafferty, and I'm actually a newcomer to the Fiber Artists Network group and also to Northeast Florida. And it's interesting for me to contrast and compare the way the different artists work in their medium and their craft. And this is one of my pieces that I made while I was in graduate school in 2008. And it was an interesting experience being in the program. I was in my 50s, early 50s, and I'm with all these students that are like between 22 and 29. And I'm looking at myself, looking at their younger selves. And I was working with this piece, and it's actually hand knitting of steel wire. And then I started making different layers and laying them on top of each other. Well, I must have been working on something else because I started dipping some of the pieces down in paper, and the wet paper pulp would rust and start to make these different shades on the elements. So then as I stacked the elements, I started noticing, like me in contrast to a younger me or students, better with experience. The rusting represented to me the rusting that happens as I grew older, but definitely the layers that were contrast between the pristine layers and the rusted layers were much more interesting to me as a composition. And I call this better with experience. Okay, this piece I titled Imitation Love, and it's something that I made from handmade avocado paper pulp. And while I was making it, I had elements from my garden that I was dipping in the paper pulp. And then I tore the paper and stitched it and made this dimensional, the triptych. And I'm really happy to say that this was actually included in a book called 500 Paper Objects. And it was a time of healing and restoration for me. Okay, these are 3 pieces that I made. They're actually wearable art, but they were made as art pieces. The two on either end are made from plastic shopping bags that people would normally throw away, and they're talking about California, like islands of this garbage that's destroying the environment. Well, in 2008, we had the economy crash, and I'm listening to people who had master's degrees in engineering being unemployed, and I started thinking, if this economy continues at this pace, people won't be able to afford garments. And so I thought they'd have to wear garments or create garments from the bags that they're carrying their other goods home. And that was how I came up with these two, the concept behind these two pieces. And the blue and the sand are representative of time when I lived in Savannah, Georgia, and it's called Land and Sea. The centerpiece I call a dressing gown to filter out bad chi. And it's actually made from used coffee filters that I had collected daily. And instead of throwing the coffee filters out, I would rinse them, put the grounds in the compost, rinse them, dry them, press them, and stack them. And then it came to me while I was working on another collection for a fashion show. I started working, this was actually like a relaxing place. And I started sewing each one of these elements on to the gown. And I see it as body armor. I see fashion as the way we present ourselves to the world as body armor. And this is actually very sturdy and thick, and it reminds me of the armor that you would see when you go to the Metropolitan Art Museum and you look at the armor there. And it's the coffee filters are coated with beeswax, and I see that as kind of like a translucent, like a skin effect to it. So it's actually wearable, but it's a sculptural piece made to represent fashion.
We hope you enjoyed the exhibit, and we want to give a very big thank you to FCCJ for hosting this in their beautiful gallery. And if you would like to know more about the Fiber Artist Network, please visit our website at www.fiberartistnetwork.org. Thank you.